Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation entitled Why is Teaching Difficult and Why is Teaching for Peace is More Difficult? My name is Christian Dave Sumagka together with my partner Monera Talib, and we are the reporter for this presentation. This topic, while focused on peace, starts with a topic on teaching. It combines the challenge involved in teaching and teaching for peace. Teaching involves keeping order in the classroom, pouring forth facts, usually through lectures or textbooks, giving examination and making grades. However, there is more to it than what appears, and this is where the art of teaching comes in. Peace is not a separate subject to be taught, but the creation of a dimension across the curriculum, a concern that may be explored in different ways with any subject. Since peace is not a subject to be taught, there is no clear assessment for it. It only happens because we witness the transformation of a person or lack of it. Perhaps too, an indicator that is closest when the person can say he or she is at peace, which in itself is broad or general. Yet if one of has it, it could be gleaned by certain demeanor or behavior. This is why teaching for peace is more difficult and challenging. The following is a quotation from a teacher, a German philosopher, in his thought-provoking definition of teaching. Teaching is more difficult than learning. And why is teaching more difficult than learning? Not because the teacher must have a larger store of information and have it always ready. Teaching is more difficult than learning because what teaching calls for this, to let learn. The real teacher, in fact, lets nothing else be learned than learning. His conduct, therefore, often procedures the impression that we properly learn. Nothing from him, if by learning, we now suddenly understand merely the procurement of useful information. Why is teaching for peace is more difficult? While peace is something schools are aiming for, peace is not something that could be taught like other subjects. It is a value, and much like other values, it has to be caught. Peace seems very elusive. For many years now, very many groups have advocated peace, and yet peace has not been totally achieved. How do we make peace less abstract? How do we know we achieve peace? How do we make rubrics to check if peace has been truly achieved? What really is the nature of teaching for peace? First, it has to be made quite clear. We are not talking about separate subject, but the creation of a dimension across the curriculum. A concern that may be explored in different ways with any age group and in any subject. A bird's eye view of 3 classrooms will give you some idea of this. Classroom number 1, homeroom session. In particular, in small groups, they are identifying and sharing personal experience of peace. Moments of joy, shared endeavor, giving and receiving, creating and celebrating. They then brainstorm some of the main obstacles to peace: fear, prejudice, aggression, and indoctrination. Later, the students engage in a series of activities aimed at developing their interpersonal skills, especially those which have to do with listening, to communicating with and affirming others. Classroom number 2, social studies class. Students are reading comics. In particular, they are analyzing popular image of war and the different ways in which men and women react to violent conflict. One group feels that women are always the victim, not the perpetrators of war. They are those shortly to prepare for a class debate is that it is a male society which profits most from war. Classroom number 3, the English class. Students are lying on the floor with their eyes closed. The teacher is leading them through a guided fantasy in which they imagine the world as they would like it to be in 30 years' time. Afterwards, they record their vision in words and drawings. They then work backwards from the future to the present, listening the steps and changes that had occurred to bring their perfect future about. What these claims all have in common is a shared process that is an attempt to maintain consistency between means and ends. There is no way to peace. Peace is the way. The stress in education for peace is thus as much on method as on content. Educational for peace is equally about the development of a range of attitudes and the skills such as critical thinking, cooperation, empathy, assertiveness, open-mindedness, respect, and ecological concern, among others. The attitudes are the reminder that we must each begin with ourselves, that children need their own peace of mind and self-respect before they can be concerned about others. The strong sense of fairness that many students have can, given appropriate learning experiences, become part of a commitment to justice, to caring for the environment, to becoming involved in a political as well as personal change. Teaching for peace is not merely about peace. A close relationship needs to exist between ends and means, content and form. If one is concerned about developing self-respect, appreciation of others, concept of justice and non-violence, they must also be part of the process of learning itself. This puts the teacher in a role of a facilitator rather than in authority, creating a person-centered learning climate which involves much more than just the intellect. Such a climate will encourage a participatory and experimental learning. It will involve democracy in action through the development of social and political skills in a classroom. Let's take a look at this example from the classroom in order to get ideas how some teachers do it. Number 1. The helping tree. Any good words towards another in this preschool class is acknowledged by writing on a leaf the name of the classmate who gave the help. The leaves are pasted on a big tree attached to the board that is found in the classroom. The helping tree is a concrete example of instilling kindness, caring, and gratefulness. Certainly, there is learning here and there is peace. Number 2. The learning constitution. It is the first day of school. The second year class is talking about class rules that allow everyone to learn. They call it the learning constitution, where everyone will sign. Teacher sets the tone by suggesting that the rules needs to be stated in a positive. Indeed, the students tried to follow what they have written since they were the authors of their constitution. If some ages were deemed necessary, the whole class met to amend the constitution. Sense of responsibility flows from the freedom of choice. In this case, the learning constitution worked because the students participate in this creation. Number 3. Students as peace mediators. A fist fight between two big burly boys was witnessed by many students. In school, there is a high tension and excitement in the air, but before some hecklers could begin to shout encouragement, two older students, a boy and a girl, came forward to stop the fight. They are the peace mediator. While the boy parted the fighters, the girl asked the crowd to go back in their classes. The two older students had mediator training, learning how to diffuse conflict and potentially violent situation without placing their own safety and jeopardy. Learning anger management and most importantly believing in a non-violent conflict resolution had been learned and applied in this situation. Certainly, there is learning here. Certainly, there is peace. Number 4. The substitute manager. Teacher Kring is a grade 3 teacher, is at home with flu, and a substitute teacher came. The substitute teacher came to introduce that he will be their teacher for the next few days. A raised hand was recognized. When acknowledged, this is what he shared. I am the class president and I have here the seat plan, a brief description of how our class works. I belong to the committee called Substitute Teacher Manager and we are to help you. Let me introduce the rest of the committee. James as the paper collector, Kyla as in charge of the trash, Bong as the peace and order guide, and I am your assistant. After school, the substitute teacher wrote Teacher Kring about how great her class behaved. He explained that he had not realized that pupils at such a young age could take a responsibility very surely. Certainly, there is learning here. Certainly, there is peace. Number 5. Buddies. A buddy in this class meant the partner assigned by a teacher who will be the responsible for academic performance and behavior of a partner in the class. The pair consists of a boy and a girl. The next day, the teacher asked a girl why the assignment of her partner was not correctly done. When she looked surprised, the teacher then explained that the pair or the buddies will really have to work together. So each one will know what each one has done and how they could really help each other. Helping here does not mean copying from each other. It means making the partner responsible for his or her own learning. After a month, the class was absolute delight. There were very good discussion on the lessons, Homework was done and there was not anyone who misbehaved. The buddy system worked. When the teacher announced the end of the buddy system, the students refused to obey and asked for more time until everyone could be more responsible without anyone checking on them. Certainly, there is learning here. Certainly, there is peace.
The learning environment. This writer has always pitched in the importance of classroom management. Unfortunately, this is not learned but achieved by the dedicated teacher who wants to ensure that the atmosphere for learning, just as the ambience in a restaurant, who ordered ambience, quipped erupt from eruptions, helps make dining more enjoyable. So, it is with the classroom. Take the time to make it nice looking yet comfortable. Put flowers, spruce it up, so to say. That's why teachers in the preschool and primary schools take the time to decorate their room. What happened to the intermediate and secondary teachers? This is a challenge even to the tertiary level teachers. The ambience is very important. This is what we now call learning environment, domain 2 of the NCBTS. The domain of learning environment focuses on importance of providing for a social, psychological, and physical environmental within which all students, regardless of their individual differences in learning, can engage the different learning activities and work towards attaining high standards of learning. These are strands of desired teaching performance and performance indicators. The table shows the strands of desired teaching performance and performance indicators. Even as students, you may create this atmosphere by demanding for it. Can you suggest ways to do it? In conclusion, will you agree that teaching is difficult and that teaching for peace is far more difficult? There are educational implications. Number 1, product of teaching is learning. Number 2, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. The stress in education for peace is thus as much on method as on content. Number 3, it is the skills that are at the essential core of education for peace. Number 4, if one is teaching for peace and not merely about peace, a close relationship needs to exist between ends and means, content and form. If one is concerned about developing self-respect, appreciation of others, concepts of justice and nonviolence, they must also be part of the process of learning itself. This puts the teacher in the role of a facilitator rather than in authority, creating a person-centered learning climate which involves much more than just the intellect. Such a climate will encourage participatory and experiential learning. It will involve democracy in action through the development of social and political skills in the classroom. And lastly, number 5, no matter what level students are in, the motivation set by the teacher through a warm learning environment will always work no matter the time and the era. Then, our conclusion here is the learning environment. The domain of learning environment focuses on importance of providing for a social, psychological, and the physical environmental within which all students, regardless of their individual differences in learning, can engage the different learning activities and work towards attaining high standards of learning.